It is now my pleasure to introduce our actual hosts for the evening. It's Carolyn Bock and Jona Colson, two, speaking of old friends of the Writer Center, these are definitely friends of the Writer Center, and I'm very excited that I get to work with them, not just tonight, but over the years. So Carolyn, Jona, please take over, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Zach, so much. I mean, we love the Writer Center. We wish we could be in person. We are planning to be there in the fall when we launch our 2 new books and our new authors. I think I see one here, Suzanne Feldman. She is our 2022 fiction winner. Her book, The Witch Bottle and Other Stories. I'll show you the cover is ready. It's a beautiful collection of short stories by a well-established and well-regarded novelist and educator. And we are just thrilled to have Suzanne joining us today and joining our family at the Washington Writers Publishing House, and we will be in person in October when we launch these books. We're going to be first at Politics and Prose, and then on Connecticut Avenue, and then at the Writer Center, and it's free and it's open to the public, and we'll be publicizing it. And actually, her book is now available for pre-sale. So I'm sure all the friends here at the Washington Writers Publishing House would like to pre-order The Witch Bottle and Other Stories. And we also, as we have every year since the beginning of our small cooperative press, published poetry. And we are thrilled that Anthony Mull is our new poet. He's out of Baltimore, and his collection, You Cannot Save Here, will also be out in the fall. And they are a very talented, well-regarded poet out of Baltimore and the University of Baltimore at Maryland. So we are thrilled to have these 2 new writers join us. But we have news, my friends, too, is that for many, many years, at least a dozen or so, we've published both 1 book of poetry and 1 book of fiction. And starting this year for 2023, we are going to add a 3rd book. We are going to add a book of creative nonfiction. So that can be memoir, that can be essays, that could be a hybrid book, but we are adding a 3rd book to the press. And we are also going to open, so everybody knows, September 1st, our manuscript contest where we will look for a book of poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction. And just a little asterisk, because I know we have a lot of members of WWPH or people who have published with us. With the creative nonfiction, we are opening it up to people who have published with us in the past. So we know we have so many talented people going back 30, 40 years that we thought with a new category, we could open it up to past members as well. Though, just as we always have, we judge blind. So judging is done by WWPH members. It's blind judging to keep it, fair and square and open to all. So that's our exciting news. Our other exciting news is that Jona and I are taking the reins as co-presidents. And Kathleen, who has been with us for 8 years as the president, is stepping into a new role as the VP of Fiction. And we're going to do at the end a little tribute to Kathleen because, there's just some secrets we want to share about her. But it's so hard when you're not in front of an audience. But yes, so we're going to do a tribute to the end to Kathleen and her 8-year reign, just like the Queen. Jubilee, not as expansive, but we'll try to make it as fun at the end. One last thing before I hand this to my co-president, co-host, co-editor, Jona Colson, is I want to give a big shout out to someone who has been a huge supporter of the press, and that's Jean Feldman, who is here with us today. Hello, Jean, how are you?
I'm great, and I'm so happy to be here and so proud to be able to support so many of you, because as a creative person, you wonder sometimes, is anybody out there? Does anybody hear me? And I know how much it meant to our daughter, Holly, when you published her first book of poetry. And it's like a dream come true. That you all work so hard as writers and artists, and it's so reaffirming when somebody acknowledges you. So I'm just so very blessed that we're able to do this. And thank you for what you do for all of the people out there with dreams and hopes.
Well, Jean, first of all, I'm so glad to meet you, even if it's on Zoom. We are so grateful for your support. As almost everyone here probably knows, our poetry manuscript is supported by Jean. We have the Jean Feldman Award. And this year, she gave a special dedication to the award. She dedicates it to her best friend from high school. It sounds like a lifelong friendship with Dottie Warren. And I want to just thank you in her memory. We accept your donation. We are grateful for it. And we are grateful for your daughter, Holly, who is our Vice President of Poetry at our cooperative small press.
Well, and I want to mention, when Dottie had her celebration of life, her son is a starving actor and has been for many, many years. And her parent, Dottie, and her husband have supported him. And at her service, he got up and said, I just want to say one thing to you parents who have children who are artists, creative artists, support them, don't give up on them. And, you know, what a memory for Dottie to be able to do this for her. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And we are grateful, and we're so happy that you'll be able to join us today, because we have two wonderful poets who speak to today as well as the ages. I don't want to delay anymore, but I know Jona wanted to share just a few things, and then we're going to introduce our poets.
Yes. Thank you, Caroline. And again, thank you, Jean Feldman, for being here. Thank you so much for all your support. Big hearts, big hearts. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for being here. I recognize so many wonderful, beautiful faces and some new faces. And I appreciate you all taking the time to celebrate Grace and Myra this evening and the new additions that we have of these miraculous manuscripts. And I'm just going to share my screen for one moment just to give us some visuals here. So in the fall, we did also reissue 2 editions, Working Vocabulary by Sid Gold, who's a longtime member of the Washington Writers Publishing House, a book of poems. And we also reissued And Silent Left the Place, which is a wonderful novel by our treasurer, Elizabeth Bruce. So we cannot do pretty much anything without Elizabeth Bruce. And this is a phenomenal novel. And again, the poems by Sid are just beautiful. And there's actually a foreword written by Holly for Working Vocabulary. So we do hope that you check those out as well. And I think kind of when I was talking actually to Myra a few days ago, and hopefully Caroline will agree with this, we wanted to reissue 2 other books. And these were sort of really the first books that Caroline and I have, spearheaded and put through the machine as it is, as our role as co-presidents. And we were just so delighted to be able to issue new editions of Altamira, which originally came out in 1987 by Myra Sklarew, and Why I Cannot Take a Lover by Grace Cavalieri, which originally came out in 1970, I gotta get this right, 75. And so they have new visions, these new covers, which we absolutely adore. And, you know, they're not the same as the original covers, of course. But we had an amazing cover designer, Andrew Klein, who really read these books. He absorbed the manuscripts, and with our, you know, suggestions, recreated these beautiful covers. And we're really very, very happy with these. And we're so proud, and we're so happy that you guys can join us this evening in celebration of these two wonderful new additions with a foreword by your co-presidents. Caroline Bock wrote a foreword and interviewed Grace Cavalieri, and I wrote a foreword for Myra Sklarew. So I will be putting the link for Altamira, and very, very soon Why I Cannot Take a Lover will also be available for pre-order. So thank you all for that. So let me introduce Myra Sklarew to everyone. Get my cheat sheet down. So Myra, wonderful Myra Sklarew, is Professor Emerita of American University. She's the founder of its MFA program, which is still the only Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing program in Washington, D.C. She's a former president of the Yaddo artist community. She studied biology at Tufts University. She studied bacterial viruses at Cold Spring Harbor Biological Laboratory. She did research at Yale Medical School in memory and prefrontal cortex. And she also earned an MA in the writing seminars from Johns Hopkins. You know, so she's got a lot of things going on. And one note that I found was Myra uses the historical and scientific inquiry into poems and prose that very often confronts Jewish identity and the legacy of the Holocaust, as well as many other topics, just sort of being witness to the moment. And we're so lucky to have her words here. And she's the author of numerous collections of poetry, specifically The Witness Trees and Lithuania New and Selected Poems. She's also the author of Over the Rooftops of Time, Jewish Stories, Essays, and Poems, and the short story collection, Like a Field Riddled by Ants, which I would encourage everyone to absolutely have a Myra Sklarew collection in your library, because it's worth it. And very briefly, I'm going to read from my foreword. I know we won't want to get to Myra, but this is part of my foreword in her book. Just like the caves of Altamira in northern Spain, timeless and inspiring, this collection of poetry is one to be celebrated, studied, and admired. In the title poem, Myra Sklarew asks, "And if I should give you these words, and you are not there to receive them, so they become part of what is unused and moves on?" But lucky for us, we are here to receive these words, and in this new edition of Altamira. And Myra Sklarew is one of the most revered and well-known poets in the region as well as internationally. And I am so honored that I get to present her, and I've studied with her at American University. So Myra Sklarew, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonah. I'm very touched by being part of this. I wanted to begin by thanking Caroline Bock and Jona Colson for taking on the leadership of Washington Writers Publishing House with energy, care, intelligence, and literary insight. As writers and teachers, they know how much real time it takes to bring this mission into life. I applaud them both. And above all, I hope that you both will somehow find the time and the impulse to do your work as well. And if you want me to call and remind you, I'll be very happy to do that. Altamira is the name of a cave in northern Spain, many caves, with paintings done in charcoal and polychrome some 36,000 years ago. If the cave is open, if the air can come to blur the lines of the bison, will the ancient secrets vanish? That's been a big dilemma. And basically it's not open these days. But I was intrigued by it, and it reminded me of a village elder that I loved in in a Greek village called Mekonida on the island of Evia. I had once lived with a Greek family when my children were small and learned to speak and eventually learned to read and write Greek. And the village elder took me on when I visited and introduced me to all the 15 families in the village, and which meant I had to drink 15 cups of Greek coffee and 15 glasses of water in order to be part of the community. And I'd like to read a poem that's to him. His name was Uncle George, and in Greek, Barba Yorgi. Letter to the village elder. Barba Yorgi, when you write to me, it sounds as if you're addressing your own fate. Agapi mene mas Myra, you begin. My beloved fate, you say, using my name. And though I have asked for news of the 3 goats tethered beneath the mulberry tree, bundles of sorghum you've cut from the lower field, hanging from the branches for each of them. You ask about the 3 generations of my family instead, and about my health 3 times. And to my questions about the hens and the beautiful daughter of Yorgos, and about your grandson Stamatis, who drives a tank in a new war, you only speak of the 3 suns which shine in your yard. And while you avoid all my questions, 3 goats pick clean your pockets filled with almonds for Christina, and 3 fates are at work, one turning the threads of your life upon her spindle, one measuring its length, and a third with her terrible shears poised over the spun thread. Another place that intrigued me was Morocco. And for people like me who are old, when we were young, we didn't see the world the way young people can now. I don't think I got into an airplane until I was about 18 years old. Now my great-granddaughters go in infancy to France and other places to visit family and so on. Morocco is one of the most intriguing countries I've ever been to. The landscape is incredibly diverse, and the human landscape is very diverse as well. I was involved and getting to know some of the Berber community. And so this is a Berber gentleman talking. What Hassanin Mbarak said: if you ask how many are buried here, I must ask you how many liters of water are in the sea. At their doorposts, they kept nailed a passage in strange script, which they touched with their fingers and brought to their lips whenever they entered. They taught us to say the blessing over bread, and this over wine, and this for the slaughter of animals. And why did you not recite the blessing yourself over the tea just then, he asked. When they left us, we embraced them like brothers, for they had given us pleasure as we had them. We have taken their names for our children. When we call our sons, our daughters, we carry in our voices a small song of their names. We do not know what became of them. Have you seen them on your way into this place? He was from Ouarzazate, Morocco. This was in 1980 and 81. There are poems about world loss, and there are poems about individual loss, and what we keep as remembrance of those we have loved. And this is about the death of my father. Refusal. In August, you died, and in September, the year turned around regardless. In October, the leaves on signal depart their trees. On signal, the flies grow sluggish in the window well. Frost crystals line up on the glass. Only I am recalcitrant, refusing to put away the leather band that circled your wrist, the clock house with its contents fallen out of time. Hieroglyphic. At the end of the poem, I refer to Hatshepsut. Sorry, she was the second female pharaoh in 1478 BC of the Egyptian dynasty. I was very impressed when I realized what her status was. Amazing. Hieroglyphic. Once a girl was innocently typing and put the wrong word on the page, and in a flash changed my career from physiology to psychology. I thought, what if the same girl types the place of my birth after I die, Baltic for Baltimore, or writes Black Forest for White Mountain as my name, or instead of repose puts down poseur. I thought, what if the cause of death were a broken heart instead of a broken down heart? My last street on earth, Wormwood instead of Marywood. Who would argue my case for me? Surely some good professor would come and read down the tome of my life from top to bottom, like Hatshepsut's hieroglyphs, making up a wonderful story from wavy lines and birds and small unexpected footprints erased by the sea. And the last poem I'll read is Paleontology. My version of paleontology. A man, when he looks at a patch of earth, sees the cities swarming beneath. And when he looks at a mountain, he remembers how the sea pushed up into peaks, leaving remnants of sand, coral, and shell he'll find when he walks there. When I look at a face, I see the tribe spinning toward the surface. I see the lungfish, his primitive air bladder, barely keeping enough oxygen to sustain the bubble, which is saving a place for our brains. I see a fish climbing into a tree, a cell dividing and rising to the surface of the skin like dreams spun in the darkness of night, rising upward slowly toward morning. I thank you very much for all the work involved in creating this new life for this book. And I applaud, and I am grateful to read with Grace Cavalieri, who I respect and love, and who changes life for so many people in this place and wherever she is. So thank you, and thank you, Jona, and thank you, Caroline.
Jona, I think I'm up next, right? Yes. Oh, Myra, thank you for those poems, for taking us places, for those dreams. I mean, they're really inspirational. And now I have the great honor to introduce Grace Cavalieri, who, as Myra said, has made it her life to encourage and inspire writers. She's one of the co-founders of this press, one of the 4 co-founders, and hopefully she'll say a few words about that. But I'm thrilled to have been able to write the foreword to the new edition of her 1975 collection, Why I Cannot Take a Lover, which has long been out of print, but which I found to be just so timely. Her poems talk about the struggle to be a wife, a mother, and an artist, something that I could relate to today. They're also political at times. She has one of the, I think, most important poems about an abortion I have ever read. She is someone who, when I interviewed her and I got to travel to her home in Annapolis to do so, talked about inspiration. But her poems from 50 years ago spoke to me today. I shouldn't have been surprised. Grace is the Poet Laureate of the state of Maryland, the author of over 26 books, a playwright, the founder of The Poet and the Poem, celebrating 45 years on air, now with the Library of Congress as a podcast. But when I traveled to Annapolis in the most, in the pouring rain, and you'll see that in my forward, that's how I open. I was sure she was going to cancel. And she said, no, dear, I won't cancel, only if you need to. So I drove the hour from my house to her house in the deluge of rain, but it was so worth it because she shared with me a key word, that we need courage as writers. That we need courage. And she kept repeating that word to me, and I held it close to my heart. We have to have the courage to pursue a creative life, even if we are parents, even if we are teachers, even if we are, name whatever you are in that blank. We need to have the courage to pursue a creative life. And with this, I turn the screen over to a writer who I found to be one of the most courageous people that I have ever met, Grace Cavalieri.
Caroline, and Jona, I am more emotional than I thought I would be. Just the idea of all these years later that you have you're breathing this bright light into this. It's like a new genus. You were just taking this publishing house and just revolving it into something I could not even have imagined 40 years ago. John McNally was a naval officer with my husband, and he had the idea of a writing collective because no one could get published in the 70s, of course. And he thought it would be great if three of us came together and put out some books, and then those three put the shoulders to the wheel and put out the next books. Then those six would put out the next books, and it would be an inverted pyramid. And look, here we are now, an icon of Western civilization. Jona and Caroline, thank you so much. I am feeling extremely touched and emotional. I love you so much. You guys rock, really. Well, this book, which I didn't know opened into a heart until you came into my life. I never opened it that way. Has a history, as we all have a history. And it is that in being in the Navy for 25 years as a Navy wife, my husband and I finally landed for shore duty in Annandale, Virginia, and then Oxon Hill, Maryland. Well, Ken had been in Vietnam, had not had to kill anyone, but he came home from being a naval aviator, changed and with PTSD. So when you read this book, you can't really see that underneath. You can't see the tumult under the lines. But if I read the first poem, maybe you will see something you never saw before in this poem. So Why I Cannot Take a Lover is, the book is Why I Cannot Take a Lover. Talking him in. I've got the lightest foot and the heaviest hand, the man on the ledge said. I love you, I said. Look, I etch it on your exact blood. It's the truth, like a light which goes on, see. Let me touch you with even the slightest of left hands. Pentecostal as a breather beneath water where we wake to the middle day together, together, his main vein tied off from the sun's eyes, failing, failing. I dreamed his dream. I told him how to cope with poison ivy. I said there are visible implements. The plumbing's good here. I can cook. They make plastic body organs now. there is brightness higher than the moon and stars. The scared birds chatter to each other, laying out odds on their safe air. Fortunately, the odds worked in our favor, and for the next many, many years, Ken was able to turn his love for heavy metal into beautiful bronze statues, and he healed himself with coming from the metal of heavy aircraft to the metal of bronze. And I was able to support, he supported me and I supported him for the next years until 2013, allowing me to write and I allowing him to drip his little bronze onto his wood. And so the birds had scared air, but it worked out for us all right. And I would like to read what sustains all of us, I think, and that is work. And Caroline and Jonah are showing us today that work is holy. It's really all we have. If we are lucky enough to turn it into play, then we are artists. But until then, it is the only thing we were ever promised. So what do we do with it? We'd better love it. And this poem is called Work is My Secret Lover. It has an epigraph by Paul Zimmer, some of you know. It says, jazz men even refer to sex as work. Some primitive people believe that death is work. Work. Work takes the palm of my hand to kiss in the middle of the night. It holds my wrist lightly and feels the pulse. Work is who you'll find with me when you tiptoe up the stairs and hear my footsteps through the shadows. You'll see me lift my arm to stretch and then lean down to put my head to it. Work threatened to die once for all that was left unsaid, so I took to it like a young bride flushed with excitement. Adultery too, yes, I admit it. On all the holidays when others gathered at the table, I was dreaming of it. Making love to the movement of paper, the words from my lips, the feel of it. Sometimes when company came, I'd throw a tablecloth over my work and set the plates, and everyone acted as if nothing were visible, pretending I was the good hostess that I was. While on the Christmas tree, work waited patiently among ornaments gleaming like a groom. I am guilty as charged, for nothing else could buy my feelings. And why would I sell the only thing that ever loved me the way I loved back? But my beautiful, long-lasting, faithful lover, my friend who will never leave. And I have that, and it's a good thing to have, because I will be 90 this year. And guess what I have? I have a lot of work to do. So I treasure it. I talked about my husband of 60 years when we were Navy people. And now I'm going to go back to when we first met. And that was in junior high school number 3. And this is called Safety. When you were in the 9th grade and I was in the 7th, you were a crossing guard keeping order at junior high school number 3. No one was disobedient when you wore that wide yellow strap across your chest. No one bruised another, caused trouble, or so much as threw a stone. No one cracked a joke about you, a man in uniform. How did that yellow vest feed your soul to let you know someday you'd fly a plane just to feel the power of a strap across your chest? What liberation to know how to be in charge, strong and capable, flying through gunfire and lightning again and again to come back to me. Although we were young, you were 15 and I was 13. Since then, I've never known the world without you. Now I must be 12. So someone asked me what my themes were in poetry, and I said, the same old things over and over. Love, marriage, domesticity, feelings. Actually never went that many places. So when I hear Myra talk, I say it's like looking at the center of a flower that keeps expanding, because she has been over the world and I have been in little bits of it. But because love is the hydraulic for all of our writing and our relationships, and what is our writing without relationships? So this poem is called Locator. I don't know why love works, yet it's undeniable. Every line of it hand-tooled like a finely wrought page. This is very exciting, the extra beat that my heart skipped, because marriage is discipline, like an athlete's with the grace of a dance. It's stillness and silence, the end of our differences. Surely our bodies were always prepared for it. I was on the verge of sorrow when I thought of this tissue, this sustaining legend. Here's the door that will not close. The outcome is uncertain. Why do you torture me for explanations? I only know love is the bed of gold we lie on. And I will end with a tiny poem, which is a poem of, oh, there's been so much tumult and so much to write about and to feel. And all of my writers who are so courageous to make it permanent so that nothing is really lost, because as I say, loss is where we write from, and we have to make things permanent. So I end with a poem which makes me feel calm. It's called Mudra. Every day I wake to find that I know nothing. The next day I find that I know even less. Today I learned that when I wake to consciousness, the cat will come to me. He doesn't need to see my open eyes. Today I learned the right hand on the heart will calm its beating. I will not know this until I touch my heart. After that again, I will know nothing. I wish to thank you for giving me new life. And I know you've given Myra new life, and for giving writing new life. I am so grateful, so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you so much, Myra. So Caroline, could I open up maybe to some questions? Would that be all right? Okay, if we have any questions for Myra or Grace, please feel free to maybe raise your hand, or meaning, well, you can do this. I may not be able to see you. You can raise your hand from the Zoom box in the corner, or please feel free to also put them in the chat box. To think about maybe a question for Myra, a question for Grace for these new additions, please. I would happily encourage. Just very quickly before that, I do want to give a little shout out. Hopefully, Myra, you won't mind. Myra's new edition is dedicated to her twin messengers of light. And I think I see them here. I think maybe, do I see Olympia? And do I see Elle? There they are. I see them in the Zoom. So hello, Olympia and Elle, the twin messengers of light. Welcome. How beautiful. Yes, so thank you. Thank you all for being here. So thank you, Rachel, for showing your beautiful twin daughters. Any questions? I know, please put your hands up again, and maybe if you want to go, I'll acknowledge you, and then you can say your question. I know I saw a hand, so please do your hand again in case I missed something. Brando, please.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Grace. I'm so delighted your books are being reissued. This is such great news. I'm going to ask a quick question for Grace, just because she talked about how her subjects really haven't changed over the years. But tell us a little bit about, I mean, we all have the same subjects. We work over and over again as individuals and as humans. I'm curious what, in what ways those subjects have changed their clothes over the years. In other words, what forms or what kinds of ways of expressing those subjects have you tried out and enjoyed? Like, in what ways have you brought new life to those themes, or in what ways do you hope to bring new life to those themes going forward?
Yes, I like the going forward stuff. That's a really great question. I've never even heard such a question. And I'm trying to flash on the answer. And I believe that it has to do with something which is individual to me, and that's being a playwright. And somehow when I take characters that are in my book and put them on stage, I am really rinsing them off and giving them a new life, because they're hanging around the house, with nothing to do after you create them. Mary Wollstonecraft, Anna Nicole Smith, Madame de Stael, and so there they are. Once you bring them to life, you can't put them in the box. And so I've always had to then write a play about all these characters. So I think it's kind of a way of refurbishing for me and taking something and making it new. But as far as the memories of the past, of the children and those things, when you go into that other reality, there's nothing but grief there really for the loss of it. So that we have to glitter it up with art. Glitter it up. Thank you. That was a great question.
Yes, thank you very much. And also, Myra, I noticed in your list of what you're working on, you also have called Remember, a play cast as music. So in some ways, you're also playing around with different sort of forms. So what are the ways in which, whether it's fiction or it's poetry or it's play, how does that sort of change the way in which you approach characters or the actual piece of art itself?
Music was, in a sense, my first language. I studied music with a Polish concert pianist, and who cried out to Mother of God every time I made a mistake on the piano. But I often thank her because, and when I was up at Yada, running Yada, one day a car drove up and an elderly Polish woman got out, and she marched into the great hall at Yada with the two wonderful Steinway pianos and sat down and began to play without any notice ahead of time. It was amazing. I just think that music, again, which I think poetry does, is a language all of its own, and it's not like other language. And if it can't arise from some hidden place, then it can't take life. It can't form its life. It's a different language, and music. Since music doesn't have to start with language, it's easier in a sense. It's a language that operates or comes out of another place, something not literal. I think in Jonah's book of poetry, he has a poem in which one line is a very sort of common language, and then there's an elaborate and far more mysterious poetic line. Jonah, which poem is it? What is it called?
Maybe you're thinking of Job Interview?
Yes,
That's
yes,
the one that we
yes.
shared.
It's why I love that poem. It shows the contrast between those two places which arise from entirely different places inside us. I don't, my neurophysiology is not up to date enough to tell you exactly, or whether they even know the reason, but it is a different, and when you heard Grace, it comes in some other, it arises in some other way, and it takes us on a journey that's different than average speech. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I've answered that, but.
No, you have. Thank you, Myra.
Yeah.
Any other? Barbara, hi, Ms. Goldberg, please unmute yourself so we can hear your wonderful voice. I wish I could unmute you for you, but I can't. There you are.
I am? Okay. I just wanted to say this is a very fortuitous pairing because it seems to me that Myra thinks of herself in a vastly historical context. I mean, going back to the paleontologists and to the caves for that matter, and in a way puts herself and her life in the context of that continuum. Whereas Grace is our great love poet. Where's Grace? I mean, she might as well join seriously, because it starts with a young love and it goes through all the stages and it gets deeper and deeper with all its complications. And I just love that the two of you are coming from such different places, but they're both inspirational, I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? I mean, I have some. I would actually sort of ask Grace and Myra, what was it like? You kind of spoke to it a bit, and Caroline, please feel free to jump in. What was it like revisiting these manuscripts after so many years? And what was your reaction when you knew that we were going to reissue them?
You first, Myra.
No, you go first.
You know, honestly, it's an unexpected pleasure. But the first thing is you get very worried, you know, about whether the poems even stand up. And you think, oh my gosh, is it too late to write my first book again? So I looked at them and I was really surprised that although there were lumps under the mattress, that I was okay with the truth of it. And that's really what I looked for. I just wanted to make sure that that we weren't going to publish something where I was showing off or playing dress ups, because, you know, when you begin writing, everything's so very uneven. But when I looked at the book again, after all these years, it did have my truth. And so I couldn't be ashamed of that, whether it's ugly or short, like Nemirov said, whether my truth is ugly or short, it's mine, you know. And the fact that you're revitalizing it and bringing it to life is it just gives you reason to go on. Thank you.
And I would add to that that I was terrified at first. I didn't know whether these poems would hold up in any way, whether they'd be of any interest to anyone. But I would say that the tenderness of your guidance, both of you, and those you assembled to look at things in the books, was such a sweet avenue. So I'm very touched by it, and it brought back to me my life in teaching, and that my students had to put up with me, and they survived and became like you too. So thank you.
Caroline, please.
Jona, while you asked a question that looked back, I want to ask a question that looks forward. Grace mentioned she was 90 or coming up on her 90th, which I was dumbstruck by. But I know that when I met with her, I said, well, then what's next? What's next? I mean, it's not over yet. It's not over yet, Myra. We're glad we could look toward the past, but we also want to look forward to what's next for Grace Cavalieri and Myra Sklarew.
Thank you for that, because 90 feels like a slippery slope. It feels like a pinnacle, and I think, oh no, but you know, you're really right. There is a next, and there's a lot of work on both of our desks, but you two you did shine a light on it. Let's face it, you and Jona did shine a light on it in a very special way. All these papers that we're going to get to. Yeah, we have a life yet. Thank you for WWPH. We have a life.
Myra, I know you have several projects in the making, right?
I do. In my old age, I'll be 88 this year. The 90 is very special. You know, I've gotten more interested in science. It's always been my companion. I was raised by a scientist father, and that was what I thought was going to be my career. and I did sneak it in, as Jonah mentioned to me, in some courses I taught, literature and, you know, memory, sneaking in little neurophysiology. Where was I going with that?
Future projects, what you have going on.
Okay. Yeah, I have finished a collection of essays on medicine, medical issues, and also on, I'm fascinated by the lives of mushrooms and you know, there's that. And I have a Greek novel that I wrote about the village in Greece, that the life in the villages is unique, and every piece of it is something to look at. It somehow contains the past, and it confronts the future. I mean, in this particular village, for instance, the refugees from Syria and other places were coming from Turkey, through Turkey, in small boats to these islands. And these are people in the villages who don't have many resources, but they would give up their meals to a stranger and not have meals for themselves. I mean, that was the way that they lived. And so there's a great deal to learn. And I feel privileged to have been just purely by accident. I mean, getting there and was a pure accident. I mean, and knowing something about the language and all. So yeah, there are other projects. The question is whether you'll you know, have the pen in your hand and say goodbye.
No. Work, as Grace said. I think we have two more questions, and then we will move to the last part of our wonderful celebration. Grace, there's a question in the chat room that asks about your transition to visual arts and what inspired that, and does it work with your poetry?
That is the most fun. Maritza, thank you. You know, I have no right to do this, but A.R. Ammons once said, if you're nothing, you can say and do anything. And so I thought, I've got the credentials. Oh my God, nobody's got more credentials than I do in art. So when COVID struck, what a gorgeous book. Thank you. I just found some old canvases in my husband's workshop, and I don't know who gave me permission to do this, but I just said, you know, so sue me if you don't like it. And I just every day, I dream. I started dreaming in colors. It's like I have a band of angels. I said, this woman is going to go nuts if she can't get out of the house for 2 years. So let's squirt some color on her. I actually dream a painting and then I do it the next day. So I don't know what I'm connected to, but it's a lot of fun. I dreamed the other night of breaking glass, and I couldn't wait to get up and do it. So, I mean, how can you fight with a life like that? I now also found some paper I'm going to crumble, and I found some gold paper in the bottom of my Lipton tea box that I'm going to crumble, and I am ready to roll. I can't wait. I have some paintings with screen over them. I used a lot of technical technical materials like screens and screws and glass, and I am just having a ball. I have given away 80 paintings. One got lost, so FedEx paid me $100, and that's the only money I've made in art. But I was happy for that, you know. That one got lost, and they do pay up. But I have 80 paintings hanging up all over America, whether people want them or not. It's just, A.R. Ammons, thank you. If you're nothing, you can say and do anything.
And you are really wonderful. I am amazed by your art. It's incredible.
It comes from someplace we don't want to know about.
It's really beautiful. I see maybe one more question, Caroline, from Karen. Is that okay? Hi, Karen.
So thank you for this renewal of a wonderful beginning in Washington, because Washington Writers Publishing House and even the Writer Center, they were all part of a big move to bring the arts to Washington, D.C. And I would like to know, I think, is it possible that both of these were first books by you both? And, oh no, not for Myra.
When was Swan Research?
Swan Research was after, I believe.
Yeah.
But the Word Works published that after.
Mhm.
But also, who do you point to as your inspiration for the work that is in, your book, these Washington Writers Publishing House books?
Who are you asking?
Both of you. So take your choice.
Who inspires our work, or for this particular book, or
Yeah.
all of our work?
No, for this particular book.
Oh, well, in my case, it was really Sure Duty for the first time in 25 years, and grappling with being a military wife and coming to an area where I wanted so much. I'd been in the house for 10 years with children under 5, and Ken was on 9 carriers, and my creativity was going to it was going to be an atomic bomb if I didn't do something with it. So everything was just culminating, this book and wanting to start some activities and organizations. It was from being a military wife and being isolated for so long that it culminated. It just had to come out in my case. Hormones.
I don't think I can answer that, Karen. My real inspiration that led me to writing in the first place happened in either 2nd or 3rd grade. I had a teacher named Helen Lang, who I've never forgotten, whose brothers were fighting in the Second World War. And in my life, the Second World War was a very important experience on a daily basis for children and families. We collected medals, we sent things overseas, we sent our relatives were fighting in the war. And one day she would go to the window and cry quietly. And I realized that if I wrote little stories for her, I could make her happy. And she was tall and had a lot of hair, and she was coming down the aisle, and I said, Miss Lang, I have something to tell you. She said, write it down. And that began it. And I've never, so, and how a particular work comes, I don't know, but I still remember her. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I could just listen to Grace and Myra talk all day. I mean, this is life. It's totally amazing. So thank you all. Thank you all for the wonderful questions and for the beautiful reading. So any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat if we have time later, or I'm sure Myra and Grace would love to hear from you. But I'll turn it back over to Caroline for the next part of our celebration this evening.
Yes, our last part. Thank you again, Myra and Grace. I mean, you just are inspirations. And there's another inspiration here, frankly. How's that for a transition? Kathleen Wheaton, who Jona and I have worked incredibly closely with this past 2 years as we put together our anthology that many of you are in. This is what America looks like. Poetry and fiction from DC, Maryland, and Virginia. But even more than that, as we're going to do this little mini Kathleen tribute. Kathleen has led our cooperative press for the past 8 years with a calmness, a cool, a sure hand that I think must come from her roots in Northern California. I often feel she's the complete opposite of the neurotic New Yorker that I am. And I think she is one of the more talented writers that I have ever met, particularly with the short story form. She was the winner of the 2013 WWPH Fiction Prize for her collection, Aliens and Other Stories. And she is an extremely talented editor. And I'm so glad she is not leaving us, that she's just handing the reins, giving her faith that Jona and I can do this job that she has done really so wonderfully the past 8 years by herself, which I can't imagine doing it by herself. But she's done it, and she's brought to fruition half a dozen or more books, including mine, including Jona's, including Adam's, including so many people who's on here. And I'm so glad that she's not leaving us, but only stepping aside so that others could take the reign in the true spirit of WWPH. And she is going to be our head of fiction, so in charge of the 2023 judging for all the fiction manuscripts. But I don't want to be the only one praising and touting and remembering Kathleen's reign. I asked a few others to join in and share some of their thoughts. So I'm going to call on Robert first, and then Holly, and then Brandel, who are all going to share a few thoughts. And then I'm hoping Kathleen will give us her words of wisdom, or be like, the queen and wave to us from the balcony.
Benediction.
Yes. But Robert, I'm going to hand it to you.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. I only have a few words to say. Kathleen and I were co-winners in 2013. So I've always, I feel like we have a special relationship in that regard. We did a sort of mini book tour together, which was quite an adventure in itself. Sometimes we were reading to ourselves, but that, we're kind of like an indie band that's still building up their following. And I really fell in love with her book of short stories during that time. So I've always felt very honored to have been the co-winner with Kathleen that year. And I'm also very appreciative of her leadership of the press over the past 10 years. Because I think one thing we've seen is that probably any press, but especially one that is structured the way this is, where you have kind of a continual cycling in of new members. You do need people who are dedicated enough to keep the enterprise sustained. Otherwise, it can just fall apart. And I see now that right now the press is entering a really exciting period of time. There's just so many great things going on. And I want to thank Kathleen for laying the foundations for this. I mean, everything that's going on now reflects the hard work that she's done as president over the years. So, thank you from all of us for that, Kathleen. And again, I'm very glad that you're still going to be part of this endeavor.
Oh, thank you, Rob.
Here's a page you might like. Here I am on Amazon Music.
Do you want me to speak, Caroline? I think you're muted. But
oh, sorry, guys. Sorry. I was just actually saying, and here is Holly, but I was agreeing with Robert that
yes,
Kathleen has laid the foundation, and her 100%. Sort of can-do attitude. When I suggested to her we do the anthology, she was like, sure, we could do an anthology, just very calmly. Not knowing that, we were facing a pandemic, and then, close to 1,000 entries, and we would do it all on Zoom. And she did it, and we did it because Kathleen was calm and focused, and that came through the screen. And I'm going to now hand it to Holly, and then we'll end with Brandel.
So I just want to echo what others have said. My deep, deep gratitude to Kathleen for her leadership, her stability over the past 8 years. I remember when our previous president, Patrick Pepper, announced that he was stepping down from the position, having this moment of sheer panic, thinking, who is going to take on all of the work of running this press? And I remember Kathleen stepped up. She'd only been with the press a year, maybe even less. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this poor woman has no idea what she's getting herself in for. And we could not have asked for a better leader. She was more than up for the task. And not only was she willing to do the job, but she's been willing to do it for 8 years and really keep us going, and really sort of raise our profile. She's done so many wonderful things, AWP panels and the anthology, and so many things have happened during her leadership to really raise the profile of the press and keep us going. And it's all unpaid labor. It's labor of love. And so I can't say enough how grateful I am, Kathleen.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you.
So if you'll allow me a few minutes, I would love to, I haven't been around the press as much in recent years to enjoy the amazing work that Kathleen has done. I've been watching from afar, and it's unfathomable to me what's happened to the press under her reign, as we've been calling it. But then again, I'm not surprised. So Kathleen and I, our lives have intersected on different continents over many decades in very serendipitous ways. And when we both found ourselves, I won't even go into the whole history because it's so crazy and convoluted. It runs from New York to Mexico to DC, where we reconnected in DC through a concert that our kids were giving as young pianists, as kids do. And I found her again, and we immediately connected, and we connected as writers, as mothers. And I think in 2008, I had won the poetry prize for WWPH. And at that time, I loved it, but it was a very different press at that time, as many of you know, than it is now. But I was with Kathleen, and she had this manuscript, and I was like, you gotta submit to WWPH. You're in a smaller pool. It's really talented people. It's great to be part of this regional press. And sure enough, she did eventually submit, and not surprisingly won. And then it's with some like both pride and guilt. I remember sort of not feeling like I had nudged her towards or people to look at her as a possible president. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I remember there's this maybe she would take the job, and it was a lot of work. And I think there were moments early on when maybe it was like, what did I get myself into? But then I see, all these years pass, wow. I mean, look at what has happened. The anthology, the excitement that's brought Carolyn and Jona up to this, and putting out a nonfiction book. I mean, the kind of fantastic growth. I mean, I don't think there's a regional cooperative press anywhere in the United States that has the bragging rights that WWPH has. And a lot of that really is due to Kathleen. I mean, it's due to all of you who've stayed connected to the press, as I mostly have as well. There's a lot of love there. And so I'm just shout out to Kathleen, to all of you, and to our dear treasurer, Elizabeth, who's been there way longer than I have. And I'm so glad her book's coming out. So all of you, I salute all of you, but especially Kathleen. This is your day. Thank you so, so much. And Renee is here to say hello too. Let's see if you can see him.
Oh, Renee.
Renee's there, my one-footed crow. So take care, everybody. I'm so happy I was here to hear this.
Thank you, Brandel. And well, thanks everyone. When I think now about how little I knew about running a press when I agreed to do this, I'm kind of horrified that I agreed to do it. But I sort of felt that it was like taking home the class hamster. And what I had to do was keep it alive until Monday. And Monday came 8 years later, and I just feel that Caroline and Jona were just such wonderful people to work with. And I mean, the thing about the press is it really is it's kind of like a group house. It's a group for people who are not group people. Most writers live pretty solitary lives, are somewhat, they have a somewhat misanthropic side, but I think we also have a longing for connection. And so to find fellow writers is a wonderful experience. And just having everybody work together was inspiring. And the work that Jona and Caroline have done to raise the profile, to ramp up the website, to put out this bi-weekly magazine. I mean, it's basically a literary magazine that they're doing on top of everything else with the press and the book fairs and the grants. And I'm just really so excited about where the press is going. And thank you so much for taking on the hamster. I mean, now it's maybe it's turned into a guinea pig at least, or thanks everyone for your very kind words. And it was so lovely also to hear Grace and Myra. And I should also say, I see a fellow former president, Jean Nordhaus, who's, I occasionally get letters addressed to her, inquiring. So I think once you're the president, you kind of never leave it behind completely. So thank you, Jean, also for everything you also did to keep the press going.
Well, Jona, we did it.
We did it.
We
Thank
did
you.
it. Thank you, Kathleen. And thank you for staying on. And thank you, Elizabeth and Brandel and Holly and everybody who's stayed.
Oh yeah, thank
in
you,
touch with
Elizabeth.
the press. No,
Man,
we could not do it without Elizabeth. But we
Yeah.
couldn't do it without all of us. So, you know,
Right.
we're in all good company. And thank you, Jona, for
Thank you,
taking this
Caroline.
on with me.
It is going to be awesome. We're going to do it. It's going to be totally great. We have amazing support, amazing people who come to the readings, all these wonderful writers. It's just going to be great. So I really look forward to working with Caroline and seeing all of you and working in these wonderful footsteps. So thank you, Kathleen, and thank you for being there with us these past 2 years on Zoom all the time, every other week, meeting on Zoom, Zoom world.
Kept us going.
Yeah.
It has.
Wonderful.
It kept us going. But in the fall, hopefully we will be at Suzanne Feldman's and Anthony Mull's readings at Politics and Prose and at the Writers Center, and also up in Baltimore at the Ivy and Frederick, a wonderful coffee shop, and more. We're going to really hit the road with our new books, as well as making sure that we keep celebrating, you know, all the writers in WWPH, right? We're all in this together.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you again to Myra and Grace.
Yeah.
I put the links in the chat. Please, again, of course, the best way to support is to take a look at these wonderful books and new editions. So keep following us on social media and see where we go.
Yeah, and buy the books.
And
Buy
buy
the
the
books.
That's everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, my friends. So
Bye.
keep posted, keep in touch. We will see everybody soon.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you, Myra.
Bye-bye. Thank
Grace.
you.
Thank you, Grace and Myra. Thank
very
you.
much.